Hello and welcome to the Hustings for the Welfare and Wellbeing Officer for 2020-21. We've asked both of the candidates your questions that you've submitted in, and they've replied to us with either a video response or written answer. If a candidate hasn't replied, then unfortunately they've been unavailable, but you can find their manifesto on the SU website. So let's go to the first question. The first question is, will you work towards easier to access mental health support, as well as making the extenuating circumstances procedure easier for students with mental health problems?
Okay, so for the first question, yes, one of my manifesto points is regarding mental health. It's something I'm definitely passionate about. There's a point in my manifesto that says I will run a mental health awareness week in the year. So yeah, that's definitely something I want to draw awareness to, and I'll work to not only improve the support, but kind of improve access to that, whether that be signposting on the SU website, whether that be having counsellors in spread across more physical locations so that it's easier for students to access, or whether that be more telephone or video call counselling sessions. And re-extenuating circumstances, yes, so Cassie, the current education officer, has been working on a self-certifying process for extenuating circumstances, so this is something that I will continue to work with the incoming education officer regarding, because I believe it takes a lot of the stress out of it if students can self-certify, so that is definitely something I will work towards.
I will focus this answer on counselling, as it is perhaps the most well-known university mental health service. The accessibility of mental health support is one of the cornerstones of my manifesto. For example, COVID-19 has shown us that we can offer remote counselling. This is a really valuable option for lots of students. There are countless reasons why a student may not be able to attend an in-person counselling session, such as disability, being a parent, or caregivers or anxiety. I will fight to keep this in as an option for students. Another accessibility feature is something I have already spoken with the head of student welfare about and will continue to work on if I get elected: the visibility of accessibility options for counselling. Normally students must call to book a counselling session, but sometimes they are unwilling or unable to, and so students could email in to book an appointment. However, this was not displayed anywhere on the website. We have to make these accessibility features more prominent. Of course, these points apply to lots of other services, but I am only using counselling as an example. The extenuating circumstances procedures are something I am really keen to re-examine. I know from personal circumstances how difficult it is to fill out the form sometimes, to have to describe what's happened or what is happening. However, the accountability of the university to outside regulations makes it difficult to commit to exact changes. The whole process needs a review. I really want it to be made less clinical and more personable. I, for example, got rejected from extenuating circumstances due to a technicality. The wording of the rejection was harsh, and it did not explain the reason for it, and it was a really difficult email to receive. I had to go into an office and fight for my right to have a retake. One of my manifesto points is to look at this wording. I also am really concerned about accounts of students having panic attacks and mental health difficulties, supported by doctor's notes and then being rejected for extenuating circumstances. Another personal example of why it needs to be made less clinical was that I was granted extenuating circumstances for 1 week on a piece of coursework. Afterwards, speaking to a welfare support staff, I mentioned that a week felt short given the circumstances and was simply told that I could have had longer. Why not mention this? A final example is when a student was asked for a death certificate as proof that another student at this university had died. That is unacceptable. On the actual application process, I cannot commit to what type of change I can make. However, I will try and work with the university to try and put into place a more accessible applications process for extenuating circumstances.
The second question is, the counselling service and mental health advisory service are chronically underfunded and are in desperate need of more staff. What will you do to ensure that more SU money is spent where it's most needed?
Okay, so firstly, I would say I can't sit here and promise that more money is going to be spent on things, especially given the current situation of COVID and whatnot. There's obviously going to be a lot of financial implications on the Students' Union. So the thing I would kind of say to this would be that I would review and identify where money is currently being spent. Speak to all kind of stakeholders who are involved within things such as the counselling service and mental health advisory services, to see if they believe that money is being spent in the best way it can. And to just keep reviewing and identifying where that's being spent, move money around if there's places that people think it could be utilised better. And yeah, as well, maybe look at other SUs and kind of see how they're spending their money, and if there's any lessons we can kind of take from that and use and apply so that we are using it in the best way possible.
This is a really tough question. There are two main issues to address here. The first is the distinction between the SU and the university, and the second is COVID-19. Firstly, in case anyone is unaware, the Students' Union and the university are two separate bodies. Although the Students' Union can put a lot of pressure on the university, the Counselling Service and the Mental Health Advisory Service are both funded by the university. Subsequently, the Students' Union cannot easily increase funding to these areas. The second issue is COVID-19. Even if the SU did fund counselling, it probably could not afford it this year. Previous officers have won support by promising more funding, but this year COVID-19 means that resources for the university and for the Students' Union are down dramatically. In their role as equal opportunities and welfare officers, previous officers such as Miles Smith-Thompson and Zoe McKenzie have fought for more counselling funding, and as a result counselling is in a much better position than it was. However, COVID-19 has had and will continue to have a huge impact on the university's financial position. As a consequence, I have committed in my manifesto to try and protect the funding for counselling and other services that previous officers have fought for. Subsequently, as much as I want to, I cannot promise more funding, but we can still make huge improvements, including providing remote options for counselling or better accessibility features, as I have discussed in the previous question. We can also explore more alternative routes to increasing support. There is a potential for mindfulness workshops online, for example, which holds the potential to host far more people than regular workshops. It is really difficult to say all of this as someone who has had to make use of the counselling system myself. To hear that there will likely be no more money to expand it further is really disheartening. But if a candidate is promising extra funding when they are being unrealistic, we cannot make spending promises. But that does not mean we cannot make improvements. We can still make a huge difference.
The third question is, how would you make sure the services both you and the Students' Union provide will be persistent and engaging across the entire academic year, as well as key events or awareness months?
Okay, so on a practical level, I will plan out all campaigns, major campaigns and events at the beginning of the year so that people knew what was going on for the entirety of the year. There was sufficient time for planning and kind of resources could be allocated evenly to spread across all campaigns throughout the year. I would collaborate with different groups, services and networks, etc. to reach different groups of students and to advertise through these different channels to increase engagement as much as possible. Find out what students want from these services and campaigns, because if you're not kind of doing things that students are interested in, then they are not going to engage and interact with them. Giving away freebies is always good. Students love a freebie. So things like exam packs during exam time, kind of keep giving them out to engage with students, and also kind of running big events throughout the campaign weeks, whether that be just one big event at the end or kind of throughout the week, kind of in order to have a focal point that we're working towards that kind of people can be signposted towards if they want to.
This question is really nuanced. There is concern that the university and the Students' Union only care about mental health for a week. Sometimes this leaves students feeling like events are simply a token gesture or are done for show. However, they can serve a valuable purpose. Often the most difficult step to getting mental health support is that first contact, and these events help achieve that. Welcome Week in particular is where lots of students engage with welfare first. Subsequently, even if we are not back on campus by September, we will have to have some form of Welcome Week, or we risk having more students fall through the net. However, the person proposing the question has a very valid point. It can feel sometimes as if there is a lack of support throughout the entire academic year. One thing I'm really keen to work on is a collaboration between the university welfare team and the Students' Union to create joint support. There is lots of support out there across the SU and the university, but it is often badly signposted. We can fix that, which would give us a far greater ability to reach out to students and for students to reach us. I'm also working on a guide with the current Welfare and Wellbeing Officer and the university about if you are concerned for a friend. It is a long-term, real support like this that can make a genuine difference to people's lives. This is part of my push to improve the communication and transparency of welfare. I also think that some changes can be subtle. Sometimes a lecturer can make a comment about how students missing lectures is due to laziness, or a lecturer will go out of their way to make things difficult for students who have missed a lecture. Sometimes there just needs to be an understanding that there are so many reasons why a student may not be able to attend a lecture, whether that is mental health or otherwise. This would be about encouraging lecturers to avoid deriding students for not being able to attend, or not deliberately pausing lecture captures so that they can say something secretly to the students in attendance, as it is really disheartening.
And the final question is, welfare should be a priority across the Students' Union, especially as we have active policies about this. How would you work intersectionally with other officers, groups and staff to improve on existing welfare structures that we have?
Okay, so I think the important thing for this is to identify the different support that different groups of students will need within their welfare structures, because obviously it's going to be different for a lot of different groups. So I've worked with different officers. For example, I've worked with the Activities and Sports Officer to facilitate the establishment of the Welfare and Wellbeing Council, which will give me access to welfare committee members of sports teams, societies, SRSs, etc., to identify the specific support that they feel they need and that their members need within welfare structures. So we'll get the input from students there. Work with other officers such as postgraduate and international to identify support that these specific groups need. And then I'd also work with the university staff, for example, staff from Health for You, to improve and kind of find out where they think these improvements need to be made.
This is something I'm really keen on working on. One of my main manifesto points is the need to collaborate more with part-time officers. Often not getting the recognition they deserve, I will have more regular meetings with them to ensure that individual groups are being supported, particularly during COVID-19. COVID-19 affects us all differently. Some LGBT+ students have had to make really difficult decisions about whether to go home to unsupportive households or whether to stay at university. Students have self-isolated with other LGBT+ students because they are unwilling or unable to go home. Another group particularly affected by COVID-19 is international students, who have had to make really difficult decisions about whether to go home, and now face deep uncertainty about when they will be able to return to the country. These are just two examples of the issues I have discussed with various groups around COVID-19, but working with other officers, groups and staff does not stop there. As a welfare officer, it is crucial to work with other full-time officers as well. Welfare needs to collaborate. Often, the best thing for people's well-being is joining a society or a sports club. If we are not back on campus in September, it will be vital to engage with part-time and full-time officers to ensure that we are able to engage with all students from every background, ensuring that they are still able to find a sense of community. Even ignoring COVID-19, there are numerous things we can do. I have discussed in other questions the need to expand and to highlight accessibility options for services such as counselling, including making remote counselling a permanent option or providing workshops online. I am also fully aware that I do not have the answers to every question. If you think I am missing something or you wish to share your experience with me or the current welfare officer, please get in touch, as we would love to hear your thoughts.
And that's it. Thank you to both candidates for participating, and best of luck to both of them. You can find their manifestos on the SU website and also vote until 1 p.m. on Monday. We're also going to be having a results event on the evening of Monday as well, so make sure that you check social media for that. Thanks very much.